Hey guys, MSH Garage here, bringing you another video. So today I want to talk about a couple of things before I actually get into my content. I wanted to mention that I just went to, if you've been following my Instagram, I went to Pennhurst Fuel and Fire, and surprisingly I brought home second best Ford in show at that gathering. So I was really pleased about that. I think I posted some pictures. I can post some close-ups of the trophy I got from that. So already good start to this season, although I will admit going out in the weather, it was quite miserable outside, so there wasn't a huge turnout. I think I was one of maybe 5 Fords there, so maybe not necessarily surprised, not a ton of vehicles there, but I'll still bring home the win. And also starting to do a little bit more cosmetic work, which I'm going to be getting into at some point to show you some of the little nuances and additions I'm going to be adding to the 5.0, especially after my reveal and build video the last time. So the topic I want to cover this time is discussing something that I feel not maybe a whole lot of people had experience with, and I pray that a lot of people have an experience with. Basically, what it's like to lose a modified vehicle. So there may have been some hints on my Instagram if you pay close attention. Approximately, well, what is it at this point? I think 3 months ago or so, it was January 12th. I lost a car that was very dear to me. So I had a 2014 V6 Mustang. And now this Mustang wasn't just any old ordinary standard V6. It's a V6 that I put a lot of time and work into. It was practically full bolt-on. It had cold air intake, tune, gearing ratio, the whole 9 yards. And we ended up losing that vehicle. My wife got into a relatively bad accident. Now, thankfully, she walked away without a scratch. The vehicle did its job and did its job beautifully. The airbags did deploy. She got into a relatively substantial crash. She was pretty dazed about it, and when I came onto the scene, I saw the car and I figured before insurance even got to it that I think the car was probably done. And after I got through everything and they assessed the vehicle, sure enough, the car was totaled. So it's something that I hope that no one ever has to go through, but there's a lot of things and considerations that I guess you don't really think about, and especially it's something that I think everybody has to think about a little bit, especially having a modified vehicle, that there is a chance being on the road, regardless of you're just tracking it or you're going to the drag strip or even just driving it daily, you could lose it. And it may not be necessarily your fault at all. It could be something, just a freak accident that happens. You have to swerve to avoid hitting an animal, or, somebody stops up short in front of you, which is what happened to my wife. There's a lot of different factors that take into consideration, and some things are just outside of your control, and you might very well lose that vehicle that you put all that hard work and time and effort into. So why don't I talk just briefly, and I'll throw some images up here to include as well of what my Mustang looked like, and then you can follow my Instagram. I'll probably do a shout out on Instagram to my 2014 V6 as well. Her name was Marilyn. So as I mentioned very briefly, I put quite a bit of time and effort into that car. Totally done on the exterior. I had rear and quarter window louvers. I also had the gearing ratio, 373 gearing ratio installed in the back. I had a drive shaft, aluminum one-piece drive shaft. I also had cold air intake, throttle body, a tune from American Muscle at first, but then I switched over to more power tuning eventually. A little shout out to 37 Stangs for that, thankfully for that little gem and bit of information, which actually added quite a bit of power to the vehicle and quite a bit of throttle response. Also exhaust system, catback, headers. I think that's mostly covers it. A really nice tire and wheel setup. I had 285s in the back. I had two 255s in the front running on. First, the Nitto NT 555, the Gen 1s, and they were phasing them out around that time, so I got a pretty good deal. And then they came out with the Gen 2s, which I replaced the rear wheels with at some point with those Gen 2s. Also some exterior styling that you can see in the picture as well. So got a lot of compliments on that car. I could also post some of the drag times as well. That car was running into the 13s in the quarter mile. It surprised the heck out of a lot of V8s. A lot of, I'll say, lower level V8s. I never went head to head with a Coyote or anything like that. And I'm sure, I probably would have lost, or it would have been a close race, but it was quick though, and it really had a special place for me because I bought it back in 2014. As I mentioned in my intro video, it was the first car that really got me, bit by the modding bug and got me into this. And I learned a lot on that vehicle about doing brakes, about doing intakes, about putting a catch can in the car. I mean, everything that I learned up until that point, I learned on that vehicle. So that's a little bit about the vehicle. So I also want to talk about, so what is it like, is the title of this video is, what is it like to lose a modified vehicle? It's an absolutely horrible experience. It is definitively not as bad as losing someone you care about or a loved one in an accident. It's not anything like that, and you can't really compare. But it's pretty horrible, though, especially for a car guy, I could say. I was thankful, and the first thing I thought was, oh my God, was my wife all right? Because she got, pretty rattled up, but she walked away without a scratch. But the thing that's really starts sinking in is, first off, you put all that time and care and effort into that car. That car got an award at another car show. Just a lot of compliments and a lot of it. A lot of people that really enjoyed seeing that vehicle and were surprised by the fact that it was a V6, from the sound, from the look, from everything. The car in general got a lot of love, and all the memories that you think about that you made with that vehicle as well. And I think that really feeds into the idea that it's a member of your family, and it may not be an animated, living, breathing person, but for a car person, for somebody who cares about their vehicle very dearly, for a car guy, it hurts a lot. It's a part of your ego, basically. And you put yourself into that car, and it's a projection of you. And I wouldn't be ashamed to say that my wife and I both shed quite a few tears about losing that vehicle. So it's like losing a family member. That car went everywhere with us. It was a daily driver. We did absolutely everything in it. And you get used to it. I mean, I don't know if everybody feels this way about the vehicles that they get into. From people, a lot of my friends and other people that I know that talk about cars, it's just a mode of transportation for them. But when you put this much time and effort into a car and made the kind of memories that we made in that car, it is a big part of your life, and it really means a lot. I mean, Marilyn was a part of our family. Losing her was a huge blow. It really sucked. And even to this day, I mean, it's only been 3 months. I severely miss that vehicle. So the other thing to talk about also is not just the emotional part of it. It's obviously a big hit, and you don't realize until it actually happens that you're not going to be driving that vehicle again. One of the unfortunate things, though, getting into some of the more technical aspects of losing a vehicle is, a lot of the stuff with talking with the insurance company, what people don't realize is that, well, and maybe a lot of car people do it, people who've lost cars before probably realize this, but you don't get a lot of that money back that you put into the vehicle. Now, to be quite honest, overall, I probably spent maybe about $6,000 worth of mods, maybe 7 at most, to get the output I had on that car and to be how, to build it into the vehicle that I envision. And for the performance outputs and what I put into it, that wasn't that much money, I don't think. Not for the benefits that I received on the other end. Now, everyone's budget is different, and that seems like quite a bit of money. And, you start to realize also that you put that money into the car, and some of that money that you get back out is in basically smiles per gallon, right? Not necessarily in worth of the vehicle. But I was surprised by a couple of things, though. For example, the drive shaft, the gearing ratio, which I know is a coveted thing for a lot of Mustangs. I mean, the V6 comes with those with 263s, from the factory, and those things just suck. I hate to say they really inhibited the V6. And some people look for having those 373s or 353s or some higher gearing ratio than that for the V6. You think things like that, especially if it was installed by a Ford factory-approved retailer, those things would add value to the vehicle. And I discussed and try to prove my case to the insurance company, but they just didn't see it that way. Pretty much everything that I did that I mentioned was all considered cosmetic and considered personal preference on the vehicle. Now, it may be a little different if you put a supercharger in the vehicle. Cross my fingers, you would hope at least, because those vehicles do usually end up appreciating in value, and people do sell those for a higher premium, especially if installed by an approved reseller. But there's probably no guarantee there, and you want to make sure that you insure yourself for those sort of things. Now, when I purchased the vehicle, it was purchased as a quote-unquote used vehicle because I bought it as a lease. And what I ended up doing is buying the vehicle out for myself early, and it was only an $18,000 vehicle when I bought it. So the real killer was when we got into the accident, just upon looks, they looked at the car. It was worth about $15,000, and just from what they could see, they were already estimating $15,000 to $20,000 worth of damages on that vehicle. I will throw a few pictures of the vehicle and some of the heartbreaking images of my vehicle after it got into the accident, post-accident, and also before I left her and said goodbye to her in the junkyard, or the tow facility, I should say. She was pretty smashed up, as you can see below, and I tried to salvage as much as I could from the car. Unfortunately, a lot of the front-end stuff, the cold air intake, was smashed up. I can throw a picture of that up also here. So continuing along the lines of the technical aspects of losing the vehicle, one thing that you can consider, and I thought about, was taking the vehicle as a salvage status. Now, it's something that isn't necessarily ideal because from what I understand, it's almost impossible to shake that salvage status, depending on the state that you're in. At least I found for Pennsylvania, it's really hard to shake that status, and you can't, once it gets a salvage status, you can't, even if it's rebuilt the whole 9 yards, if everything is approved by the state, it's almost impossible to get it back to the original status. It's always going to be a salvage. I know there's probably ways to do it, and I talked to some people about the possibility, but it's very difficult. And the problem is just the worth of the vehicle. We could have tried to keep it, but then I finally got a second look at the vehicle and kind of made my final decision at that point and looked at the car. And one thing I noticed, I can throw up the pictures of this also below, is that the engine actually did get moved and pushed back. So, the accident happened and crumpled the whole front end, crumpled the hood, the whole 9 yards, but just totally smashed in, and the engine got pushed back and moved as well. Because I know what that engine looked like when the vehicle was brand new, and when I was driving it, and it wasn't pushed that far back. If the engine might have been intact, it may have just been cosmetic work. But with that pushed back, you don't know what the shape of the drive shaft or the drivetrain is. The airbags, like I said, went off also. Some pictures that I don't throw up and show here is that there was some extra weight in the back for the wintertime because we were driving that car in snow. And that stuff, when my wife got in the accident, pushed through the rear seat and actually ripped the rear seats out from their bolt points, just ripped them right through, and they flew up and hit the back of the front seats where my wife was. So there was just a lot of damage, having to replace the airbags, and we came to the determination that we just couldn't afford to hang on to the car. We needed something that was going to be completely reliable, something that wasn't going to sit around as a project car, and I just decided that we had to take the money and we had to let go of the vehicle, unfortunately. And I have a lot of pieces from that car, and it will always be a big place in my life, and I can guarantee you that at some point in time I'm going to go back to an S197 to do a project, hands down. I absolutely love that vehicle. So those are, emotionally what it's like to lose a vehicle. And, some of the technical aspects of losing the vehicle, and be very careful about what you do. The take-home message here is that you really have to be, conscientious that when you're putting those mods in the vehicle, they're really only for you. They're not for anybody else. And unless you have some kind of special sort of insurance, there's nothing you can really do about recovering much of your loss. Because just like the vehicle, the parts that are on the car are also depreciating from the time you put them on there. They're being used constantly, depending on your usage of the car, but regardless, they're being used. So, those are things that to take into consideration, and that, sometimes it's apt to have a detachedness from your vehicle, but it's very difficult. I know it's difficult for car guys. Car guys all say the same thing. I mean, there's something about your car, and if you work on it, just being your baby. I mean, it's, like I said, it's a part of your ego. It's something that's very important, and if you drive it a lot, it just gets into your life every single day, and you get so used to that car. And even though I have a supercharged 700 horsepower, 5.0 Mustang, it doesn't matter. I still miss that car, driving it every day, the sound, the feel, the whole 9 yards. So it's something to really take into consideration and just be extraordinarily careful with whatever vehicle you have. And it doesn't even matter how careful you are. Sometimes you can still have to, face the possibility that you might lose that vehicle at some point in time. I think overall, though, I did relatively well. My insurance company was very generous, and they actually gave me the maximum value for the car. So the car only had 60,000 miles on it at the time of the loss. The car's 5 years old. They could see from the images, and they could tell when they looked at the car that it was very well taken care of. Overall, I think we did relatively well, and one thing to tie in here that'll make a lot of sense is that money that I received from the Mustang went into the 5.0 and went into that supercharger and the build, the later end, the more recent end of the build that I showed you with the supercharger and the install there. So a piece of my V6 Mustang is living on in Marissa and in my 5.0. So it's nice to kind of pass that on and to, make sure that there's a piece of that legacy that carries on, in addition to all the massive amount of parts I have hanging around for that car as decoration. So what's exciting, though, and probably the question that everybody asks me is, what did you get next? Next time, I'm going to be bringing you the reveal of what we ended up picking up. And maybe from some of my Instagram images, you can see what I picked up or might be able to get an inkling. So I just want to say thank you for watching. Click the like or subscribe button below if you like this video. If not, you can leave derogatory or nasty comments about me as well. And thanks for your time, guys. So stay tuned, and hope to bring you more content. Thanks.